It all started on a rainy Friday evening, the kind of night when the world outside felt distant and cold, as though the storm had cast a veil between me and everything familiar. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound, and I sat in the dim light of the living room, watching the shadows dance on the walls. I had always trusted my wife, Elizabeth, with everything, my heart, my secrets, my life. We had built a bond over the years that seemed unbreakable, or so I had believed. But something had changed. Over the past few months, I noticed a shift in her, something subtle yet undeniable. The warmth in her smile had faded, and her laughter no longer came easily. It was as though the joy we once shared had been replaced by an emptiness I couldn't quite name. Our relationship, once filled with passionate exchanges and intimate moments, had turned into a series of routine interactions, almost mechanical. There was no fire, no spark. It was as if we were both simply going through the motions, drifting further apart with each passing day. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. There were times when I would catch her staring out the window, her mind seemingly elsewhere, and I wondered if she was already gone in ways that went beyond what I could see. I didn't know what to do with the growing unease in my gut, but I tried to convince myself that it was just a phase, that things would improve. I didn't want to believe that the love we had built together could erode so quickly, so quietly. One evening, the moment that would change everything, Elizabeth went to take a shower. It was a small thing, an ordinary moment, but something inside me shifted. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand beside me. Normally, I would never dream of snooping. Trust had always been the foundation of our marriage. But this time, something urged me to look. My hands trembled as I reached for her phone, guilt swirling in my chest even before I unlocked the screen. I had no right, no reason to check it. Yet, as the screen lit up under my fingers, I couldn't stop myself. What I found was worse than I could have ever imagined. The messages on the screen were not innocuous texts or harmless chatter. They were intimate, filled with details I never wanted to see. Elizabeth was seeing someone else, a man named Paul. They had been meeting in secret for weeks, sharing moments that should have been mine and hers alone. The words between them were affectionate, filled with promises and confessions of a bond that seemed to be growing deeper with every exchange. They made plans to meet, and as I read each message, I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under me. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking with every word. How could the woman I had loved and trusted with everything betray me like this? My thoughts became a blur of disbelief and anger. The evidence was undeniable. Messages detailing rendezvous, affectionate words, promises of things I thought only we shared. The pain cut deep, sharper than anything I had ever felt before. But instead of confronting her in that moment, something inside me held back. I decided to stay quiet, to play the part of the husband who knew nothing, all the while my world was crashing down. For days, I pretended everything was normal, watching her lie to me with a calmness that made my stomach churn. She would tell me she was going out with friends or staying late at work, each time knowing exactly where she was, knowing she was with him, not me. The hurt was suffocating, but I kept it to myself, unsure of what to do with the knowledge I had. I wanted to lash out, to confront her, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Then an idea, both dark and vengeful, began to take root in my mind. It felt wrong, but it also felt like the only way to regain some control over a situation that had left me feeling powerless. Elizabeth's sister, Sarah, had always been close to both of us. She was kind, compassionate, and in recent months had shown me more warmth and affection than Elizabeth had. Our relationship had grown into a strong friendship over time, founded on shared interests and a deep respect for one another. Sarah had no idea about Elizabeth's betrayal. If she knew, it would devastate her. But that thought didn't stop me. I reached out to Sarah one night, under the pretense of needing someone to talk to. Elizabeth was out, supposedly with friends, and I told Sarah I was going through something difficult and needed a friend. Sarah, ever the compassionate soul, agreed without hesitation, and soon she was at our door. When she arrived, I poured us both a drink, and we sat down in the living room. The atmosphere between us was heavy, thick with unspoken words. Sarah could see the strain in my face, the way I struggled to keep my emotions in check. She asked gently what was bothering me, and slowly, reluctantly, I told her everything. Elizabeth's affair, the lies, the pain I had been living with. Sarah's face turned pale with shock as she processed the betrayal. She reached out, her touch soft and comforting, and in that moment, something changed between us. We had both been victims in this situation, but it was as if, in our shared pain, we found something that neither of us had expected, a connection. It wasn't planned, and it certainly wasn't right, but in the depths of my hurt, I found solace in the one person who understood, the one person who hadn't betrayed me. One thing led to another, and before we knew it, we were wrapped in each other's arms, finding some sort of comfort in the chaos of the night. It wasn't until the front door suddenly opened, the sound of it cutting through the air like a knife, that we realized the gravity of what we were doing. Elizabeth stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain, her face flushed in a way that didn't take much imagination to interpret. But when she saw us, her expression shifted from confusion to shock to horror. She dropped her keys, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to say or do. The silence that followed was deafening, and for the first time, it wasn't me who was trapped in a lie. It was Elizabeth. I stood up, trying to keep my voice steady, though the weight of everything hung heavily in the room. "Elizabeth," I said, my words calm but filled with pain, "I know about Paul. I've known for a while now. What hurts the most is that you never once thought about how this would affect us. You destroyed our marriage the moment you chose to betray me. And now, here we are." Her eyes filled with tears, but there was no anger in them, only regret and the realization of everything she had lost. Sarah, still in shock, gathered her things quickly and left, unable to process what had just happened. The damage had been done, and now we were left to confront it. Elizabeth and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. Neither of us spoke, both of us too numb to find the words. Eventually, Elizabeth broke down, her sobs filled with regret, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. The trust we had once shared had been shattered beyond repair, and the love that had bound us together now felt like a cruel memory. In the days that followed, we both agreed to separate. Elizabeth moved out, and we began the painful process of divorce. It wasn't easy and it wasn't clean, but it was the only way forward. As for Sarah, she apologized profusely, but I couldn't place the blame entirely on her. We were both victims of Elizabeth's betrayal. Caught in a moment of weakness neither of us could have predicted. The future felt uncertain. There were no easy answers, no way to go back and undo what had been done. The road ahead would be filled with scars, but one thing was clear. Our marriage was beyond repair, and the love we once had could never be reclaimed.